Dan Miller had one rule about pets: no cats. He had said it 4 times in 6 years of marriage and meant it every single time. Then his wife showed him a photo. 3 hours later, he drove to the shelter. What the 20-pound Maine Coon named Duke did to this man over the next 8 weeks, nobody in that house saw coming. And what happened at 1:47 a.m. on a Wednesday proved that Duke had other plans for Dan's heart from the very beginning. Dan Miller had built his life around systems. He was an architect. He liked clean lines, predictable outcomes, rooms that did what they were supposed to do. He had been married to Rachel for 6 years, and in that time, she had asked about getting a cat exactly 11 times. 11 times he had said no. Not maybe, not let me think about it. No. He was allergic, he said. He traveled for work. The apartment was too small. The reasons shifted over the years, but the answer never did. He had a genuine gift for reasons. Then Rachel showed him a photo. She had found it on a rescue page at 7 in the morning while Dan was drinking his coffee. A Maine Coon, 20 pounds, brindle and gray, sitting on a shelter blanket with an expression Dan later described as someone who has been waiting for a specific person and is beginning to lose patience. Rachel said nothing. She just turned her phone around and let the photo speak. He looked at the photo for 11 seconds. He drove to the shelter at 10 a.m. Duke was 3 years old and weighed exactly 20.4 pounds at intake. Maine Coons are the largest domestic cat breed in the world. Males regularly reach 18 to 25 pounds, with some exceeding that considerably. They are known for dog-like loyalty, for following their owners from room to room, for playing fetch, for responding to their names with the reliability of a well-trained Labrador. They are also known for choosing one person, specifically, and redirecting the full weight of their personality at that person until the matter is settled. It is not subtle, it is not negotiable, and it does not particularly care whether the person in question considers themselves a cat person. Duke had chosen Dan before Dan had chosen Duke. The shelter coordinator handed Dan the carrier and said, almost as a warning, "He is very focused." Dan nodded without fully understanding what that meant. He understood by the end of the first day. Duke did not explore the apartment. He did not sniff the corners or investigate the closets or do any of the things cats are supposed to do in a new space. He walked out of the carrier, looked at Dan for a long moment, and sat down directly on Dan's laptop. Dan moved the laptop. Duke moved with it. Dan moved to the couch. Duke followed. Dan went to make coffee. Duke sat on the counter and watched him with the expression of someone supervising a task they have serious concerns about. Rachel thought it was hilarious. Dan did not initially share this assessment. He did, however, find himself explaining Duke's behavior to his colleagues in a meeting 3 days later. He stopped mid-sentence and did not finish the explanation. You have not subscribed yet. That is Duke's least favorite thing about you. Hit subscribe. The first 2 weeks were an education. Duke had opinions about everything: the hour Dan woke up, the chair Dan sat in, the side of the bed Dan slept on. He did not express these opinions loudly. He expressed them by being present, immovably, in the location he preferred until Dan adjusted. Dan, who had spent 6 years designing spaces for other people to inhabit comfortably, found himself being redesigned by a 20-pound cat with no architectural training and extremely fixed ideas about furniture arrangement. He started working from home more, not because of Duke, he told Rachel, just because it was more efficient. Rachel said nothing. She had been married to Dan for 6 years. Here is what most people do not know about Maine Coons. They're one of the few cat breeds that genuinely bonds differently with different family members. They do not simply attach to whoever feeds them. They assess, they observe, they select. Behaviorists describe it as targeted social bonding. The cat identifies the person in the household who is most resistant to cats and directs the full force of their personality at that specific individual. Nobody is entirely sure why. The leading theory is that resistant people are more interesting. They require more effort, and Maine Coons, above all else, enjoy a project. Dan was an excellent project. The moment that changed everything happened on a Wednesday in November at 1:47 a.m. Dan had been working late, a deadline, a set of architectural plans that were not coming together the way he needed them to. He had been at his desk for 4 hours. He was tired and frustrated and had said something under his breath at the screen that he would not repeat to anyone. Duke had been asleep on the couch across the room, or appeared to be. Then, Duke was not asleep. He walked to Dan's desk, stepped carefully onto the keyboard, which Dan had been about to object to, and then did something he had never done before. He stepped off the keyboard, stepped onto Dan's lap, turned twice, and lay down. He put his head against Dan's forearm and stayed there. Dan did not move for a long time. The plans on the screen were not finished. The deadline had not changed. None of that had changed. He was still tired and still frustrated, and the problem in section 4 of the drawings was still unsolved. But something else had changed. The room, which had felt close and pressurized for hours, felt different now. Quieter in a specific way, the kind of quiet that does not arrive on its own. He sat there in the dark with a 20-pound Maine Coon on his lap and felt something he did not immediately have a name for. It was not relief, exactly. It was not comfort in the simple sense. It was more like being found in a room you did not know you had been sitting in alone. He did not move until Duke moved first. They sat like that until nearly 4 in the morning. He finished the plans before sunrise. Duke did not move the entire time. There are things that happen to people that they do not plan for and cannot explain, and do not entirely want to examine too closely because examining them might change something. Dan had been one kind of person before 1:47 a.m. on that Wednesday. He was not certain he was exactly the same kind of person after. Duke is 4 now. He still sits on the laptop, he still has opinions about the chair and the blanket and the precise hour Dan is supposed to stop working and come to bed. He has not changed his methods. He has simply been proven right about enough things that Dan no longer argues. Rachel bought Duke a second cat bed last month. Dan moved it next to his desk without being asked. He also, without mentioning it to anyone, added Duke's name to the household Wi-Fi password. Dan still says he is not a cat person. Rachel still says nothing. She has been married to Dan for 6 years. She knows exactly what kind of person he is. Did Duke choose Dan, or did Dan choose Duke and just not know it yet? Tell me in the comments.